I'll ask our thank you. I will ask our Deputy Chair, Joe, if you're happy to open us with karakia. Aye. Thank you, Joe. Welcome to everyone in the room. Thank you for joining us. We have a number of people joining us on Zoom as well. We have David O'Cross, we have Gabe from Boffa Miskell, we have Johan, Kirsten, Rebecca Carr, Hayley and Greg Wilson. So welcome to everyone who's joining us. In terms of the formalities, I do have apologies from Evelyn Ratimer. I'll just see if there's any further apologies being received. There being none, I'll ask for a mover for those. Moved by Councillor Price, seconded by Chair Ormsby. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Carried. Call for any conflicts of interest. There being none, I will also do a call for any minor matters. Anything anyone would like to discuss that's not on the agenda?
Chair, can I please be given approval to leave a bit earlier at 12 o'clock, please?
Noted an early departure from Chair Ormsby. Councillor Price?
Volume's not too sharp for my ears, sorry.
All right, I will bring that a little closer. How's that?
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, no other minor matters. I will ask for a mover for a confirmation of the minutes be true and correct from the 9th of December 24. Those are moved by Member Reti, seconded by Chair Ormsby. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. All right, we are now into our first paper, our project managers update. So I welcome Cam and Connie to step us through that. Kia ora.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Yeah, so starting with the project managers update. Get a little bit closer again. So this paper just outlines some of the actions that have occurred over the second half of December, really, and January, so a relatively limited period given the Christmas break. But you'll recall there was a joint committee meeting and workshop on the 9th of December, minutes were circulated from that. We also received the finalised version of the stream classification assessment from EAM. That draft had been passed on a number of months ago, and so the final didn't raise any changes, so that caused no issue with where the master planning process was at. Connie met with Gareth from Ahuriri Trust to basically just pick up on discussions with projects, how it's been progressed, and just talking through the matter of looking to reschedule the second design hui, which was due to happen, I think, in November. That didn't, which was previously reported on. Next there, we had a tag drop-in session. That was more of a inform session with the tag group, keeping them up to date with the outcome of the joint committee meeting and the directions to Boffa Miskell in terms of progressing the master plan. There's been ongoing engagement with the airport. Again, still keeping them in the loop, making sure that the bird strike matter is being fully attended to in the design process. And we've actually got another session booked with Lizzie Civil, being the avifauna fauna expert, this week, just to connect in with her. And then a lot of you attended the joint committee site visit a couple of weeks ago, which we felt was really successful. It was a very good turnout. It was good to get everyone on site. And I think, the opportunities and the sheer size of everything sort of really came home to roost. So, yeah, that was a really effective session. In terms of just moving through to the bottom of page 6, in terms of the risk areas, not a lot's changed there, given that there was only a short period since we reported on last. But the bird strike management matter, I guess, still remains our primary risk to be cognizant of. There is a plan that we're working through there. And as mentioned, our meeting with Lizzie this week will progress that. The second risk that was identified previously and which still remains was the second wānanga with Mana Ahuriri. And I'll just invite Connie just to give a little bit of context with her discussion with Gareth.
Please jump in, Gareth, at any time, yeah. So unfortunately, we attempted to reschedule for the second design hui. Unfortunately, just in the time frame of things that was unable to occur. So instead of that, we were hoping to circulate whatever gets endorsed today to Mana Ahuriri Trust for feedback prior to any public feedback. We'd be really, really keen to hear their thoughts on it before anyone else. And second to that, I think the net is going to the AGM in March.
Just the board hui.
Board meeting, excuse me, for a general update at board level too. So I welcome any other feedback if you have ideas there.
Yeah, sorry, just in regards to Mana, we've got press here, so in relation to that feedback, obviously just getting that back, obviously we sit on the board, but yeah, it'd be good to
Pull these in close, guys.
Sorry, it'd be good to work that through the board. And then Paris, do you want to make any comment on that in relation to that feedback?
No, but we are expecting to provide feedback, and no doubt Gareth and the team will have that in there.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And if I can just speak to that point, I think in terms of how it sits, I think, with us at this table. So obviously this is a co-governance entity. We're all sitting around this table doing it together. So everything that comes out of here is coming both from councils and Mana Ahuriri, so we're sort of at the table together. I think from my perspective, it's good to come and brief the board and get some feedback at that level as well, and then encourage whānau to come along, say, to the open days on site and things like that, and actually walk the land and see the vision. So I think there's a real opportunity there to sort of get that message out once we've got those open days kind of sorted, to invite, come to site, come have a look and feedback in at that sort of whānau level as well.
Back to you.
Yeah. And in the next paper, Connie will explain the next steps for that engagement and so on. So just, to finish up, in terms of the overview of status of a number of components there, the engagement side is essentially underway, just noting that matter of discussion just now. The stormwater inputs, that has been working away quite nicely, and that it has informed the master plan exercise quite effectively now. The master plan developments, you'll see very shortly that it's progressing very well, and that we are here for that endorsement for public consultation. Budget-wise, we're just recognising the need for the more concentrated work on the bird strike matter. And in terms of program, as you're all aware, there has been slippage due to various reasons, but effectively we are on target for what has been advised and updated and approved recently. So no major issues to report, which is good.
Great. All right, thank you, team. I'll now open up for questions on the work program through the project manager's update. Chair Hanaway.
Kia ora, Chair. Thank you, Cam and Connie. I agree the site visit was really worthwhile and valued, being on the whenua and looking at where the changes may be. This is more of a question around, and bear with me, around the TAG group and the work you've been doing together. The master plan we have here today, just trying to tease out a bit more around the technical inputs that have been had and just ensuring there's collaboration across the TAG group from all the agencies, specifically HBRC, to make sure that, you know, the engineering and the technical aspects are being addressed from as many angles to de-risk the project as much as possible. Can you sort of elaborate on how the TAG group is actually working?
Yeah, so I think up until the recent TAG session, those have been of a nature to seek feedback and that technical input. Those sessions have been run by introducing the work undertaken primarily from Tonkin and Taylor doing the Lagoon Farm study, and then also Boffa Miskell and progressing their work. So we've talked through the technical matters. There was input given to the NCA process and so on. So they have all been very informative. And we haven't received any, through the queries from any of the people on the TAG following those TAG sessions. So we've felt that they've been aware and up to date on the technical matters that they're providing input on. The session held in November was more of an informed session because was it November? No, it was, it was. It was more of an informed session because there was no sort of further technical input being required at that time. It was very much Boffa Miskell taking what had been gathered from the previous sessions and the MCA process and actually beginning to draw up what was being informed. So Connie, was there anything that you'd like to add in terms of that informed session?
I think towards an informed session, more just like a refresher of who is on the TAG and who we are seeking feedback from and inputs from. There with for HBRC, we've got the asset managers, we've got marine science, open space, Parks and Reserve. Please correct me, Bart, if I got your title wrong. And all information has gone to all TAG members and all invitations have gone to all TAG members as well. I feel like everyone has been really well involved in offering feedback throughout.
Just secondary to that, please, Chair. Around the taipo inclusion or not included in the master plan, can you just talk us through why it was considered to not include the taipo stream into the regional park?
Yeah, that matter was basically a matter for scope for the Lagoon Farm Stormwater Project. So it's Connie and I probably can't comment on that, but I wonder, Phil, if you're in the background there, can you offer a comment there?
I could try. Because the focus of the stormwater treatment is the discharge consent, the shared consent for the West Shore tidal gates. So the main focus was obviously that. There's a lot of other issues around why taipo is not suitable. Its flow, like just the flow in the taipo is like huge compared to the other, the normal flows in the other streams. So to try and treat that flow would be kind of, the treatment would be fairly ineffective. And yeah, the other issue is the taipo is actually the gradient of the taipo that sits at a much higher elevation to the other waterways. So because the other waterways are pumped, the taipo would effectively it would flow backwards up the other drains. So it would worsen flooding theoretically for other areas.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Chair, could I just
Absolutely.
follow up on that? So can you just remind me who are the TAG staff from HBRC?
Just pull this in. Sorry, Martin.
I've got the picture up in front of me, right? So, just remind me, please, Cam, who are the Hawke's Bay Regional Council staff on the TAG group?
So we have Bart from the open space.
Yeah.
We have Johan from the engineering space. And Becky from the ecological space.
Right. Yeah, so that answer to the typo was to do with hydrology by the sound of it. What are the implications, I guess, for the pump station that is at West Shore that is under shared management and ownership for this design? Is that going to need capital investment? Is that part of the thinking at this stage? Any implications for that?
We haven't really gotten that far in the design. We're in the option here we've selected the preferred option to go to concept, but I couldn't speculate other than they're looking at maybe the low flow pumps would be the pumps that pump the water into the stormwater treatment, or potentially a separate pump station that would pump the water in during lower flow events, because when it's been identified that the treatment system would not handle all of the flow in a high flow event, so the pump station would still have a function.
Right. Any need for an upgrade? I was just trying to think there.
Yeah, I can't speculate. Yeah.
And is this consistent with the resource consent for that pump station? What would this layout? Is it consistent with the conditions of that? Do we know?
The option, once we get a concept, that would be something that we would be looking to get the tick from HBRC on that option would meet the required.
Would need to be audited against that.
Yep.
Right, so
I can probably add to that. So there's a consent for the West Shore tidal gates and then a separate consent for the Lagoon Farm pump station. The relationship between the two discharge points now will need to be reviewed. I suspect variations will be required.
Right.
But the next step in this process, once we've actually got clarity over the activities in the master plan and also with the stormwater solution, the next step was to actually prepare a consenting strategy.
Yeah.
To consider all of that. Yep.
Great. And I think the final question, we have had some just, I guess, initial feedback that Chair Ormsby's been referring to. Some of the facilities, I'm struggling to find them on the map at the moment. It was mentioned that the education centre, for example, is on very low-lying land, RL0. Is that going to require a lot of fill? Have those sorts of issues been worked into the master plan, keeping things above water?
Yeah, so it's definitely, obviously, that's a consideration. I think the master plan's developed along the view that, there are solutions to achieve a minimum floor level, and that would come out in the design of those particular facilities.
Right. My final question, Chair, if you wouldn't mind, it just struck me looking at this map, and this is on a slightly different tangent, that item number 1, we've been told that it's sort of maximising the lagoon area. The amount of what looks to me to be a body, quite large expanses of surface water. And the discussion with the airport was to consider minimising open bodies of water. Have you confronted the tension between adopting the largest viable area for stormwater treatment on the one hand to make it effective, yep, and exactly what will attract birds? Is there a...
So the response to that is that the wetland treatment facilities will be completely planted. So they are being designed so they're not open water.
Oh, right. So when I see
bodies.
that pale, that's,
It's a bit misleading.
okay,
Yeah.
so
Um,
could be rushes and things through
That's
all of that.
that's right.
Great.
So and that's what Lizzie Civil has been advising on. So our next step is to I guess bottom out that the concept does give effect to the advice that she has been providing.
Thank you.
Comfortable? Thank you, Councillor Williams. Just to wrap that conversation up, I think what I'm hearing from the committee is a desire to understand where the work streams that are sitting inside TAG are at. And I think there would be value if we could put it as an action that next time we meet, we get a TAG report.
Yeah.
So we understand what those work streams are, what stage they're at. I know there's a number of interactions with, say, the stormwater Lagoon Farm stormwater project that sort of sits in Phil's area, and there's a interaction there. So just understanding how that's all sitting, I think, would be really valuable.
Yeah.
Is that something we could do?
Yes, it is. Yeah. I guess just to seek a little bit of clarity, I know that the Taipō question has come up a number of times, and our response has been that consideration of the Taipō wasn't included in the scope for the stormwater design, and we have sort of referred those tank members to discuss directly with the team in Napier City doing that work. Is there anything more that we should be aware of to try to respond to the query? We haven't received any, I guess, further questions or updates from those members.
Yeah, I think, please put me wrong if I am. My understanding with the typo is that because of the topography and the hydrology of it with the interaction with the saline intrusion that comes up from the other end, it was not feasible to bring it into the park because it's also at the bottom end of the park when the topography of the land itself for the treatment, it needs to come in at the top end. So it wasn't feasible to bring typo in. Yeah. And I just think if that is the case, we just need to be clear around that and consistent with our messaging from whichever regional council, city council member of technical staff who's describing that. And perhaps that is something that we can put in a place that we can refer to.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm not sure how the committee feels about that.
Chair, can I just also suggest that if there are any separate projects that all the partners are invited to those, including the Lagoon Fund Treatment Wetlands project, because it seems like that is on its own or sits with its own scope, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so
outside the park?
Outside the park.
Park tag?
Yeah.
So
yes.
we can be consistent across both. That would be really good if that's not the case.
Yeah, so the TAG group, from my understanding, they are not the Lagoon Farm stormwater project has its own methodology. We're not involved in that. We're just receiving the outputs of it. Right. I don't believe there is a TAG group involved in that piece of work. So I don't know what the involvement on that really high technical level between Napier City and Regional Council has been. Again, Phil, is there anything that you can add to that?
Yeah, the TAG members are reporting back and they're sitting on that TAG group. So any outputs from that are being advised across the groups. So we also do have discussions at our strategic catch-ups with HBRC.
So Chair, just going back to your suggestion around the TAG group reporting back, including the stormwater treatment project and how things are going there, that might solve, I guess, the questioning, which is just meant to really be making sure we're inclusive across all the projects.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, it's important to make sure that the two are talking and are on the same track and understanding people have different lanes they need to sit in, and there's a particular work program, Phil, in your area that's being progressed, I think, through Tonkin and Taylor work as well. But yeah, if we could just include understanding how that interaction is working and assurances that they are working towards the same outcome, I think, in that tag report, that would be helpful. Is that something you'd be able to articulate?
Yes, we do. Like I said, we catch up at a strategic level with HBRC on a 6-weekly about all stormwater issues across Napier, and it is a regular. Any time any new information is coming out, it is discussed at that level. But we can include that as a routine agenda item and feedback through the.
Great, thank you. And I think and I'll leave it up to the, probably you, Cam, and the project management team, if there's an opportunity where it would be worth having the HBRC technical knowledge come to one of our committee meetings as well, so we could inquire on that, and just maybe at that first meeting where we're getting the tag report, that could be a valuable invitation as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Peter.
I've just got a question, and it's just a point of clarification. And so when we talk about that planning, I think Mayor Wise brought it up when we done the site visit around short-term and long-term. So we're talking this project being long-term. So when you're talking about the other stage of the lagoon farm, is that the short-term fix to address the need now? We were talking about the long-term need for the park. Is that where we're going for those other conversations that have been happening? Because I think there's a point that was raised as the pollution's obviously still affecting in the lagoon, but what are we going to do in the short term by this project being implemented? I'm just trying to get my head around.
Yeah. So I think the general intent is for the wetland treatment solutions to lead the project out. So that's subject to funding and the LTP planning and so on. But I think in my mind, when we're talking about long term, we're talking about all of those sort of additional community recreation type activities that could be developed in time around the wetland treatment. So I would think that the wetland treatment, as I say, will be kind of among the initial stages. The actual timeline, I think we've got funding plans for 2028. Is that? Yeah. So it's subject to that LTP planning process, but long-term aspirations are more to do with the recreation and community activities.
Great, thank you. And we can probably have a chat through that sort of priority discussion as part of our next paper when we look at the master plan as well, because I did ask the team to go through that list of sort of core work programs and put a bit of a priority lens over it, so we can dig into that as well. Councillor Price.
Thank you. Just a bit of clarification on the typo. If you're saying that in a storm event we couldn't handle it going through the wetlands, just for normal flow, could it go through the wetlands?
No, I don't think that the wetland would be sized like you'd. Yeah, I'm not the scientist, so I wouldn't say, but that ultimately the volume of water that flows down the typo is probably would take up all of the space of the treatment wetland, and you would get no effective treatment out of any of it, the rest of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
You'll probably stop me asking other questions now. Thank you.
Yeah, we haven't, ultimately it hasn't been investigated, so it's just, I'm speculating again, but that again, like, it was never included in the scope, so we haven't looked at it.
Yeah, I
but
guess
it's a completely different stream to the others. Like, it's a natural waterway that has quite a high volume flow.
Thank you.
And less of an urban catchment, right?
I just got a point of clarification on the councillor's question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Just in relation, so when there's a discharge, and I think when there's a civil emergency and you can discharge straight into the lagoon, would that happen? I don't know with the typo in that. When because that's the effect when the pump station can't handle discharge through storm events, and then you're able to discharge straight into the lagoon. That's correct, isn't it?
So I think what Peter's talking about is in high rainfall events when the wastewater is got infiltration of stormwater into it, and instead of manholes popping, there is an emergency discharge of wastewater that goes into the estuary.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what
Yep,
you're
that's
talking about. So my understanding is that most of those emergency discharges occur into the waterways that will now come into the park, most of the catchments. So it will go through the treatment wetlands.
Yep.
Yeah.
When it's completed.
Yes? Okay. If we don't have any more questions for the project manager's update, I'll ask for a mover for receiving the report, and then we will move on. Moved by Member Eden, seconded by Member Ormsby. Thank you. Did either of you wish to speak to the agenda paper? I'll open up if there's any further speakers. Thank you, Cam. I think it's been a really clear update and appreciate taking that guidance with a bit more info to come from TAG. I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Carried. All right, we move into, I'm going to say, a very exciting milestone for this project, being the endorsement of a concept design to go out to our community and seek feedback on. So, Connie, I'll hand over to you.
Cool, thank you for that one. So purpose of this is that we're seeking your endorsement for public feedback. So we've got 3 recommendations as part of this report: is endorse without changes, endorse with minor changes, or do not endorse. Our preference is endorse. The paper has outlined like a bit of a blurb of each element of the park and how we've integrated your feedback from our last committee into the park. So instead of reading the paper verbatim, I've got our master plan team online, and we've got some images here that will really talk you through the narrative and the process that we've gone to date. Really welcome your feedback at any point when we're talking about each individual item. If you have the opportunity to flesh them out a bit more, please jump in. So is William or Gabe online?
Morena.
Morena.
Hapai. I'm hoping I can share my screen, Connie. I might share mine if I can.
Give it a go. Carolyn, is that possible?
Share the screen.
Or can he take access of this one? William, I do have all the slides on my screen, so if you just tell me when to click through, perhaps that's going to be the best.
Sounds good. All right. Kapai. Okay. There we go. So we'll start on the second page. So, kia ora everyone. Apologies I couldn't be there in person, but great to be at this point in time within the master plan works. So yes, as Connie has mentioned, we've been working away, pulling together the master plan. We've had our take hui, and unfortunately we weren't able to have our hui with Mana Ahuriri, but we're hoping that we can have that hui soon to go through this with the wider hapu whānui. So where we've gotten to, it's a big milestone. So I'll just run through where we've gotten to, and then some of the elements that make up the master plan in terms of where we've started from and then where we've gotten to. So I think first and foremost, the project drivers, I think we've all come to see these as we've progressed the master plan. So big focus on stormwater, water quality, returning the Māori back to Te Whanga, how we can instill ecological excellence, maintaining the natural environment, and then looking at the significant infrastructure regionally. It'd be good to have some whakaaro around, around this. I know these have been approved by as part of our JC hui. So if you go to the next page, please, Connie. Thank you. And so with that, we've developed this framework in terms of how we work with the master plan. I think at the centre of everything was this concept around mahinga kai, and that's that's driven a lot of our stakeholder hui and workshops that we've had with the various stakeholders, community stakeholders, our tag and mana Ahuriri. So building around that concept of mahinga kai, but with that, these 4 principles around environmental well-being, activation and cultivation, economic prosperity and healthy communities. But within all of that, I think as we've worked along, some of those elements that have come from these hui, these workshops. If we go next page, there we go. Oh, no, that's all good, Connie. That one's good. So this is just looking at the park. I think we've put 2050 there, just to give that this isn't going to immediately look like this, but it's a build up over time. But it gives a bit of a sense. It gives a sense of the scale, the extent of these treatment wetlands, but also the extent of ecology, opportunities for activation, cultivation, economics, and also for community. The next page. Oh, are you on the master plan page, Connie? Did you go back?
So I'm on the icons that refer to item 1. So as we talk through each of the
kapai.
elements of the park.
Are you able to go back to the master plan just for kapai? See, kia ora. So he says you see it within the master plan. There's a lot there. I think just to separate the two. So in terms of these works, the core regional programs, and then the ones in the orange looking at what those other potential programs might be. And those would be, we looked at how those might be developed with public-private partnerships and NGOs. So, over time, as this park develops, some of these elements, some of these components to that could develop with that. But I think to give a sense, this main entrance, this whole probably go to the next page now, Connie. Break them down. So, number 1 looks at this Ahuriri Regional Park Gateway. So the next few pages would just be showing some precedent imagery of what could be, on some of the ideas that could come from these areas. Obviously, noting that this will be needing further development, but looking at these what could be. So, number 1 around this regional park gateway. So as you see along the state highway there, obviously the NZTA works at in terms of that designation. There could be the potential for a featured connection point across the motorway to the lagoon and into the Ahuriri Regional Park. So that could be a potential. But at the entrance along Prebenson Drive, there could be something quite sculptural, something that captures the identity of this place, the pūrākau associated to Te Whanganui Aorotu, and then looking at how we might create a unique visitor centre or destination point within Ahuriri Napier Hawke's Bay. So just some ideas of what those could be with the visitor hub. If we go to the next page, please, Connie. And then it just builds off furthermore around that entrance hub. So when visitors arrive, what might be some of those other opportunities there. So within the visitor centre, there could be some sort of landmark toy or as part, and then also an interactive part of the wetland. We can come down to the water and view out and across. Looking at opportunities within the discovery and learning, a sculptural park. So those could be developed, with community, creating a park people can come, spend the day. And then also looking at the production and plant nursery along the southern boundary there. There's large areas to provide for that, and that could build up over time. And in terms of that production and plant nursery, could be part of how we develop, produce plants for the site and have that reciprocity with time. Next page. So these images are just showing some of the spaces for community. So, there was the talk around this amphitheatre space. Where to best locate that. Obviously, that's just an example. But, providing a space which could be used for events, for all sorts of things. building on what's currently existing. So looking at the existing infrastructure, utilizing, could we reuse the farm sheds, the buildings there to create some sort of market space, a multi-use space, community event space, even a restaurant. So looking at what we could do there. And then building off the blow cart facilities there, there could be future potential to extend that or look at other recreational activities such as fitness, fitness park, but also understanding that, the whole park will provide for walking, cycling, all those other amenities, those passive recreation. Next page, please. And then around the site, we're looking at what might some of those opportunities be for community to cultivate, to produce kai. So within the lower part of the site, there could be establishing a pārekeke flax collection or some sort of mara. Also looking at how we might grow plants to be used for commercial opportunities. So looking at potential manuka plantation, which could provide for honey, oils, distillery, which could all feed back into that whole production restaurant, thinking about parts of plate, there could be those sorts of opportunities there. And then looking at the forage garden and trails along the eastern edge there. So looking at really that circuit around producing on the land and creating some sort of economic opportunity within that as well. Next page. And then delving deeper into the western side of the site. So we envision that would be restored, regenerating forest, regenerating wetland. So looking at how we might be able to bring that in terms of community, so providing for some sort of eco camp village, people can stay, more focused at schools, rangatahi, how they can spend the day here, understand the environment, the health of it, the well-being of it, but all part of that learning and education approach too. And then providing for these different trails, networks, connections through, really enhancing the space for activity and access. And then next page. So yes, with the treatment wetlands, as mentioned, those will be fully planted out. So the rushes, reeds, really establishing that. These are just some of the examples. Obviously, the water bodies, those probably images not to kind of refer to, but establishing, looking at, the rushes, really establishing those. Obviously, that'll take time, but within those, looking at how we might be able to create these different islands within the treatment wetlands. So taking reference from, from the past, looking at the different islands, or referencing the islands that were once within Te Whanga. How we might be able to build off that narrative and create these islands within the treatment wetlands to connect to, part of the wayfinding, trails, sculptural trails. So could be really an interesting to see how we can create landforms within that. And then next page, please, Connie. Thank you. And the last one looks at along the interface with Te Whanga, the existing stock bank in Te Whanga itself. So really activating that edge. How we might be able to establish these different amenities along there. Looking at a watchtower or some sort of tower to get up high and view across the land. So right at the confluence of the Taipo there. 18 looks at the pump station area. So how we might be able to establish some sort of landing there with, and a visitor kiosk as you walk around, kind of connect with the park, walk through the park. There's a pause point. So, there's quite a distance from the main hub to there. So, allowing points to pause, to reflect, to kind of catch your breath, and then keep going on your journey. And then 19's quite similar to those, just providing another pause point along the edge there, and looking at establishing a tower or some sort of structure to get up high and view across the land.
I'll just pause. I
Pause
realise
there.
there's a bit of
Yeah.
numbering. We had updated the slide or updated the plan and then the slides. And so the words are right, the numbers are wrong. So 19 is
Got you.
obviously 11. Sorry, we'll clarify that.
Oh, yes. I
Sorry,
see.
William,
Oh, my,
to
yeah.
disrupt your flow.
So
Look,
do we have
I-
a different, is William talking to a different map?
Same elements. It's just that we renumbered things to improve their importance when we're going out for public feedback. So we really wanted to make sure that the wetland facility was very high up, and that's why the numbers have all shifted.
Okay.
But the content remained the same.
Okay, overall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. And so the next few pages just showing some perspectives, some ideas around what these could look like. So the first one looks at the Taipo Stream Waka Landing and Watchtower. So as you can see, that connects to the water, how we might be able to get up high and across, view the landscape. Next page, Connie. The next one looks at this visitor kiosk area. So, how we might look at where the current pump station is, whether we can build off the existing infrastructure there, establish some sort of pause point there. So, it could be an area where you might grab a bike, grab a bite, and then, have it journey through the regional park. Next one looks at the regenerating forest and natural wetlands. So this is, looking at how we might be able to, so when you walk through here, get that sense of this regenerating forest, this landscape, looking at native fauna, flora, could be part of the educational side of things too. And then these treatment pond wetlands, as you see, we've tried to show, these wetlands will be fully planted out with these islands in between, these trails in between, where you can access. So, this one provides a bit of idea of what we mean in terms of these treatment wetlands will be fully planted with rushes and reeds. Let's get in next page. So the next pages are showing some of the programming, the diagrams. So just to give you a sense of the area in terms of these different components that make up the master plan. So in terms of the regenerating forest, certainly along the western edge, cultivation and production, makes around some of the edges there, aquatic nurseries. So we're looking there at how we might be able to draw on the freshwater and versus the saltwater, and how those might be used to create ponds for learning, establishing nurseries for tuna, for patiki, to be built on. Obviously, our treatment wetlands make up quite a large portion of the site. Areas for nursery, plant production, our entrance hub, and then how that can support with the complementary commercial hub, what that looks like, what the amenities within that might be. Arts research and wellbeing precinct. So building off having an area specific for research, learning, education, health and wellbeing, and then building off the existing Blowcart precinct there, how we might activate that further with more active recreation opportunities. Next page, please, Connie. And this diagram shows the different ecotones within the site. So, definitely again the regenerating native coastal forest, the shrublands, both medium and low, native wetlands, the treatment wetlands, the tidal, coastal tidal nurseries, stream nursery, Harakiki plantation, Mara plantation, the Kanuka plantation, and then also that idea around, could be in future, could be a fence sanctuary once the forest and wetlands start to regenerate. There could be the potential to provide a fence sanctuary within that. But that's just providing an idea of what could be within that one. And next page. And then looking at the hydrology. So a lot of the treatment will be coming from the Purimu stream. So you'll see that how that's fed into these treatment wetlands and how that's flowed out. We'll be building off, in high weather events. There'll be a high flow channel along Prebenson Drive that could feed into the natural wetlands. be treated naturally and then be flushed out into te whanga. Obviously all being treated along the way. 3 looks at the potential future stream connection or station, a pump house or some sort of connection to draw water in for this nursery, for tuna, freshwater tuna, and then also the same there along the northern edge there, how that we could feed into some sort of coastal nursery that regenerates itself through. So next one, please, Connie. And then this is just showing some of the indicative circulation and access across the site. So building off the current cycleways along the edge, but how we start to draw that into the site. Looking at some of the infrastructure, so roading, keeping a lot of that to the south of the site. But there could be shared access across the site through some sort of gravel trail, in terms of maintenance, ongoing maintenance, providing for that. If we talk about the Sphinx Sanctuary, just providing for pedestrian pathways only within the regenerating areas, keeping the cycleways, activities like that out of that area. Just providing with the different access points, the future access points, like if there was a bridge extension across the motorway, future connections north to the airport that way, and then also looking at the connection out to Poraiti Hills, and then also down towards Taradale as well. So really enhancing the access and connections across site. And then last page is looking at some of the indicative areas where we might be able to incorporate the creative arts and wayfinding mechanisms. So as we journey around the park, how we start to establish, guide us around the park. Different wayfinding installations, mechanisms, some public art opportunity. We talked about having these waharo, or these gateways that reference te taiao, tangata people, and also nature, the environment and people. So where those are placed on site, kind of connects with those different areas. And then looking at also incorporating areas for those public amenities, nature play spaces, part of the learning and discovery. So that's the presentation. I don't know if Gabe wanted to add anything else, or Bex.
No. Or even if we open for questions.
Is Bex, are you got anything further to add? I see you've popped up on screen there.
Yeah, I think I'd drop down the bottom of the list. No, I don't think so. I think this is what we're asking for, is a plan to take out to community engagement or community consultation. I think the last meeting we had, or a couple of meetings ago, we talked about this is a plan at which we would be informing the community and seeking feedback, but it wouldn't be a co-design sort of process. It would be more of a inform and tell us what you think, and then picking up any potential changes out of that. So we would come back at the next session with you and report back on that. So this isn't the full, what you're seeing is not the full design report that would come with the plans. This is the package that would go out to community consultation. The full design report will come back in front of you, which gives you the whole design process, how we've gone from A to B to C, which hopefully will be a really good record going forward in terms of decision making over a long period of time implementing this, because we expect, over time things will change, and so understanding the background, and at least the design report will be able to give you that understanding.
Great, thank you. What I might do is I sort of consider this part of the agenda in 2 parts. We've got the master plan, and I'm sure there's a lot of questions and comments to make around the content of that, and then we have our engagement plan as well. So I think now is probably a good time to pause, and if we have a discussion around the master plan, then we can move on to engagement plan after that. And I will start with Councillor Brown, who I see had your hand up on Zoom there, and then I'll come back into the room. So Councillor Brown.
Kia ora. Thanks for that. Just a really quick question of clarification for me. Can you remind me where we got to with retention in the flood event? Is it just that high flow channel, or sort of what sort of capacity have we got there?
So I'll just jump in for that one. It wasn't, so again, that's being dealt with through the very technical engineering program that feeds into this, which is the Lagoon Farm Stormwater Diversion Project. The wetland facility is more of a treatment facility before water enters the estuary. It's not at current level of information showing any massive benefits for retention. There will be some natural retention just because there's in that northwestern part of the park that is going to operate like a sponge, but that already operates like a sponge under our current situation, and we're not trying to change that. So we're lending it's more linked to stormwater quality than it is quantity.
Right, thank you. So we will move into the room, and so if everyone's had a chance to have a look through the draft master plan, I'll start, I guess, what I asked the team to do. So you'll remember when we workshopped this in detail, we sort of had a slightly different version of this at our last meeting, and then we have been on site with a walkthrough with all of councillors and Mana Ahuriri, which was great to have a really good turnout for that. So all of that feedback from our workshop and our site visit has been pulled into this new version you've got in front of you now. Key changes, I think, from my perspective, is that we have done a piece of prioritising work around the core function of the park and some sort of potential future work streams that may require partnerships with other organisations. You know, when you think about education, wellbeing, that sort of hub space. And obviously we start number one with our treatment wetlands being the key deliverable for the park. So happy to open the floor for questions, thoughts. The options in front of us are to send out to the community as we see it or to make changes here today. Councillor Price.
Probably got one point, item 6, the nursery, whether that would be go up in the priorities and that you could start preparing the plantings for item 1. You know what I mean? Would we want to
establish that sooner?
Yeah, establish that probably as soon as possible, because time will be required to get plantings ready.
Thank you. I think that's a really good point. I know it has been considered by the team. So if we could just take that feedback, and that probably sits, maybe as a number 3 on a priority. And whilst I sort of say we've done a piece of prioritising work, let's not get too hung up on that, because what will come as part of the adoption of the master plan is a staging plan. Once we know what the final pieces look like, we'll then get a staging plan that will match the funding that we have. So there is a further piece of staging work, but good point to make. Thank you, Councillor Price. Chair Hanawai.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair. Thank you, William, for your presentation. I have a few questions off the back of Councillor Brown's question around no real capacity for retention. And in the event of heavy rainfall, what happens to that stormwater network, either going through the park, or is the reality to take it down another pathway that provides more capacity and doesn't impact the park?
You may notice just on the layout of the park that we've really avoided any built form in that northwestern.
Yeah.
And so that is to enable a worst case scenario that this would maybe assist. But at the same time, we've got to consider if water is released into the park, making sure that it doesn't make its way back up the Piramu and then accidentally flood like the parklands area as well. So that detail would still need to be sorted out, but we're not trying to change what's currently there, if that makes sense, in terms of that incredibly rare event of where it has to go.
Just a second question, with type or stream not being able to be facilitated through the park and that water quality, can you remind us the percentage of stormwater this park will be able to deal with in terms of the Napier stormwater?
In terms of with prioritising the Piramu through, 70% of the urban stormwater will make its way through the treatment of the wetlands.
Okay, thank you. And just last question, and William, it's more your sense, because you did a great job with Cam and the team facilitating the drop-in sessions that we had. What sort of sense can you bring to the prioritisation of projects that we have listed 1 to 21? I mean, is the first quarter basically what you heard at every session by most groups?
I think quite a lot of those core programs within that were in some way discussed as part of those workshops, but definitely the first, I would say half of that would be, consider some of the key kind of views from stakeholders, community around what could be implemented as part of those first sort of staging of works. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, William. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Just looking around if there's any other thoughts from members. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, look, thank you for reminding me, Chair, of the history that's gone into the workshopping and the site visits. I regret I wasn't able to attend the site visit, so I'm loath to wade into this in any direct way. I think it's amazing what's come out. It's a fantastic product, and the next issues are really for our community to consider what their priorities are. So just a couple of questions in that context. One of the messages we've had from the community so far is they don't want to see commercial use, and I've raised that before. I note that the reference to a restaurant, brew bar, etc., is number 8, and that's tucked in quite hard to an existing sort of developed area. Was that a deliberate locational choice to sort of reflect that that's the character of that particular part, as opposed to putting it somewhere more natural? Is that a definite, just some thinking around the brew bar and the cafe, etc., or whatever, how they fit with it? What's informed that?
Yeah, I can possibly speak a little bit to this as well. This was, number 8, where we're looking at, there's an existing wool shed there. It was where we did have the end of our walk around the park with all the users, and there was a real a feedback that it would be great to keep that wool shed, that it was a fabulous kind of event space, and because part of the recreational interaction with the park was some sort of open amphitheatre style that's been in the plan, that could sit next to this space, and if there was a gathering space away from habitat was probably your best location, so it seemed to naturally fit there. I think the idea around I think event centre is probably correct sort of gathering space. The restaurant itself, I'm sort of ambivalent about whether or not that comes out in community desire. I don't think it's something council would run at all, so it's possibly could even come out of the list of things at this stage, and it would be a potential future
We could see what
investment.
the community says about that.
Yeah.
By the way, just the other one other big picture question relating to this, and it refers to the overall commercial viability and the preliminary opinion of cost. Now, I know that I raised this last year as well. I know our ratepayers are under huge stress and saying, stick to your knitting, and stormwater management is clearly that. Climate change resilience is clearly that. Some of this is probably more in the nice to have territory, although I don't put biodiversity enhancement in that territory myself. Other ratepayers might disagree with me. So we're going to be asked, what's this all going to cost? Any ideas?
So at the moment, it's in Hawke's Bay Regional Council's LTP and Napier City Council's LTP, but for NCC, it's from year 4, and they've So we have allocated just over 13 million over an 8-year period, and Regional Council has allocated just less than that. I think it's in the 10 million.
Yes.
Could be wrong on that figure, but it
I
comes in
understand
much.
that,
Yeah.
but what's it going to cost? Have we got an idea of what that is going to cost?
We are working on that. We don't have the figures yet.
So the-
In the next workshop, we should be able to provide
You will
that
be
detail.
asked, and I would have thought you'll be asked during consultation, what's all this going to cost? Nice
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
Who's paying for it and when will be a factor.
Yeah, that's fair.
So if you could maybe have an answer to that. The one other question, Chair Ormsby, your questions, if I could put to Chair Brosnan, about stormwater, etc., raised in my mind, rightly or wrongly, the issue of what happens when you get a sewage overflow, when the pump chambers are overwhelmed. Is this any part of a solution to that, or is that a completely different set of assets and
Yeah, so
conversation?
the way that I think about that, and the technical team in the room can correct me if I'm wrong. So what happens in a heavy rainfall event, and it might happen once or twice a year on average, numbers not sure, that there is stormwater infiltrating into the wastewater system. So your wastewater system, which usually only holds your wastewater, is then overwhelmed with, you think people connecting stormwater into gully traps, that sort of thing, and it overwhelms your wastewater capacity. At that point, you have a choice around you discharge and relieve pressure in the system, or manholes start popping and that wastewater comes out into the street. So they do what they call a managed discharge of wastewater into the open stormwater drains. Those open stormwater drains, the majority of that is going to feed through the park. So therefore become attracted to the treatment that will occur in the park. So the majority of those discharges will then go through the park's treatment system, because the stormwater is going through the park's treatment system. The only other comment I would make in that is that all of the water quality testing that happens at managed discharges now, because the wastewater is overwhelmed with stormwater, fresh water, there is a very low level of contamination in those managed discharges. So you're dealing with a level of contamination that is low and then putting it through the treatment wetlands.
So this, in other words, will be better than just a raw discharge into the estuary as it stands, for example.
Yes, the whole kaupapa of the park is that every discharge that is going into the estuary, now untreated, receives an amount of treatment through the wetland for our urban stormwater, which would include in those overflow.
Thank you for reminding me of that.
Phil, have I misinterpreted anything?
I guess I can just add to it. We just, you summed it up pretty well. So I and the wastewater network is a separate project that we're working on. But yeah, so as much as possible, we'll obviously go through the wetlands, but we've kind of stipulated there's a limit to how much the wetlands can cope with as flow goes. So they will cope with first flush, so the initial flush of any event, but over and above a certain level of event, the water will likely be pumped to the estuary, because the wetlands won't be able to cope with every scenario. Does that make sense?
And that's the modelling work that's going on now to understand at what level of
so we're talking about, that's like 70% of any events of the whole urban network that feeds through those channels at the moment.
Great, thank you. And I think through this paper that we're talking about, receiving around tag update, we can understand how that program of work is coming along as well. Thank you. Councillor Price.
Just to further that, there is storage. We have more storage for wastewater now, don't we?
Yes, with the cell 2 and 3 project, the extra storage at the treatment plant will allow us to better manage our wastewater flows. So yeah, there are other projects going on to, especially around that storage and some of the capacity constraints that exist in our network.
Which will hopefully stop having to pump it.
Yeah, the first thing is avoid, and there's a program of work around stopping the connection of stormwater into the wastewater network at the start. So that's a piece of the program, and then additional storage of wastewater at the treatment plant so that we don't need to discharge as often in lower events. And then obviously your third step of that is getting as much of that through a treatment system as possible before it's discharged. So there's sort of a myriad of work programs there, Councillor Williams, dealing with that issue.
Thank you. I just got one question, just around, just in the document it said about exotic. So I suppose that there's focus on Indigenous trees that have been planted there. I just read that somewhere in the document a bit earlier or the other day. So just with the tree plantings, and the focus is Indigenous trees, isn't it?
That's correct. We can make that more salient in the package going out.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess what Member Reti.
Yeah, kia ora tātou. Just a question through the Purimu stream pump. And you say 70% is going to go into the land, into this project. Now, the existing waterway going into the whānga, does anyone here know the effect that's going to have on the existing output, on the flow, because they are along that waterway? I would like to think there's still some kind of water flow that's sustaining the actual the kaimoana that's already in there. Is it going to dry up, or does the natural flow is going to come back into that area?
Yeah, I can't really talk to detail on that. What I would say is that there is a tidal influence there, so they will be maintained. But yeah, the idea would be to not have any constant flow, because that's the flow we want to get through the treatment wetlands, because they'll require a constant amount of water to keep them wet. And it's that low flow water and the first flush that generally carries the most contaminants. So that's what we're really trying to deal with.
I just got one more question. Sorry, Chair. Is that all right? Yep.
Yes.
And it's just from a previous conversation, just with the increase in birds in that, I think we talked about getting some information, because obviously they'll have effects just on water quality. So I'm just, if our overall plan about getting clean water in there, I'm just, with all the extra birds that are going to be in that locality, and then what that effect is on the environment and what we're trying to achieve. I'm just not 100% sure of that.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure either, so we'll note it in that tag, because we've got the AV fauna specialist.
Okay.
They can make a comment on that one. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good question. Gareth, you've got a comment?
Yeah, I had just a couple of points. But firstly, this is just want to commend the Joint Committee for that this is happening. This is a wonderful step forward in how communities are dealing with stormwater issues in the environment. So that's awesome. Mauri ora. Just further on Joe's point before with the Purimu stream and that interface between this new system and the current floodgate, is there currently an ability for the high tide to come upstream of that floodgate, or is all the pumping just heading in one direction from the Purimu stream?
The tidal gates do allow some flow back, so we do have a tidal influence on the downstream side of the pump station, and that includes the Old Tutaukuri. That's tidal right back to George's Drive at Kennedy Road.
Yep.
So yeah, there is tidal influence in both those streams.
Okay. And so there'd still be tidal influence of that intake?
Yeah, at this stage there's no design or plan on changing the actual tidal gates.
That's cool. Yeah, it seems like a really good option for managing this. I'm looking forward to seeing how it pans out and being part of it, but that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Gareth. Chair Ormsby.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question around the Purimu flow into the wetland treatment park, and whether there's been consideration around safe fish passage principles involved in the design of that, given, this park, one of the missions is to enhance the Māori and the biodiversity and the ecology. So have those principles in the design been considered around safe fish passage?
Just for clarity, are you saying into the stormwater treatment wetlands or into the more natural wetlands?
Well, into both really. If we're diverting water into a certain pathway, and it's going to pretty much stop going through the Pūremi stream as it currently is at the moment. The considerations of how we allow for fish life and having the right habitat for them to flourish.
Yeah.
By being diverted through another pathway, basically.
So in terms of the treatment wetlands, my understanding is that we're trying not to encourage fish life in there just because it's for treatment, it might be a little bit not great for habitat. But in terms of providing for fish habitat on the natural side, so where the Puramu is at the moment and the more northwestern side of the park, the whole purpose is more ecological biodiversity. So in the detailed design of it, for sure, the fish habitat and fish process through would be part of what the detailed design would have to consider.
Yeah, perhaps if I could just weigh in as well and just sort of remind the committee, I guess, at what stage we're at. So once we know through our community consultation and our piece of sort of more detailed work at tag level around how the water will come in and out of the park, what quantities we're talking about, which inlet areas, what affected infrastructure we will have. There is a piece of work that Cam is leading around consenting framework for that. As part of your consenting framework, you will need to complete an assessment of environmental effects, which will include understanding what habitat or environment we are affecting and what mitigation we need to do to gain consent to achieve that. So if we have some species or some habitat that we are affecting, say in the Piramu, there will need to be covered in our consenting work, how that is mitigated and alleviated. So I think in my mind there's a staging to it, and first we need to decide what we're going to do where and how much, and then we follow through with a staging plan, funding and consenting, which includes our assessment of environmental effects, cultural impact assessments, etc. So I think in my mind anyway, we're right up this end where it's good to remind ourselves of what's to come, but we probably can't answer the question yet around what exactly is affected and how we're going to mitigate it. Gareth?
Just in sort of following on from that, I think this is really awesome as a nature-based solution for sort of cleansing our water prior to entering the whānga, and I think it's really important to maintain that connection between all those natural areas within the tile space. So a design in a way that they absolutely will incorporate that ability for movement between, because the fish will help clean as well as part of that process, and and that area would actually benefit potential.
Yeah.
Tonga, yeah.
We could just make a note that that's something that's discussed at TAG as well. I think I already saw you taking a note. That would be good. Yeah, really good point. Thank you, Chair Hornsby. All right, so if there's no other forthcoming questions, I guess I'm just posing a final question to the table, and that is there anything, bearing in mind our next stage is putting this out into the community, is there anything that really makes you go, maybe not, in terms of wording, placements? We're a bit of a litmus test for this, so I'm just checking back in with you all. I've heard the comment around the word restaurant in there as part of 8, probably doesn't quite sit priority-wise up there, and perhaps that could be included more in our future potential programs, partnership opportunities.
Perhaps more the words brew bar.
Which number is brew?
It's mentioned on page 10. Like, don't get me wrong, the right place, wonderful things and fully to be supported, but some people might not see
Yeah.
that as a.
I have sat through community workshops where they've said they want to, somewhere they could stop and have a glass of something, but we will keep that
Yeah.
reasonably neutral. And William, I can see you're taking that, feedback. Thank you. Thumbs up. So I'll just,
Just a question.
See where the tower is.
it is in your agenda. So Rachel, would it be all right if this goes over? Thank you. So there was just, and I think towers are a good one to talk about. There was just a thought around platforms where we might get elevation. So that's at in your screen, top left and top right before it hits the southern march.
I just had a question around the freedom camping.
First flush and go in there.
Yeah.
So,
The main contaminant.
yeah, I'm just aware of the problems that was on Marine Parade previously. So is that, what's the plan around that?
Yeah, so freedom camping was something that was, we actually just recently at council did our freedom camping bylaw. So we've removed all non-self-contained freedom camping. So it's only those in self-contained units. And there was a desire to, in future, look at options for not just around the foreshore. So this is an opportunity, if we've got a big car parking area here, to get some people who might want to stop and stay and enjoy the park. So as an option.
Okay.
Again, going out for community feedback. So if we get that's not appropriate overwhelmingly, that will come back to this committee as well. And the feedback Rebecca was going to summarise for us. Have you got a view on that?
Oh, no, I was just aware of the problems previously with freedom camping and public feedback and just what the context was. Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Okay. We'll ponder on that and we might just move on to the engagement plan, the second half of this paper, if that's all right. You're going to lead us through that, Penny?
Absolutely. So on page 21 is just the engagement plan overview. So this very much reflects the previously endorsed engagement plan right at the start of our master planning process. I've just kind of put it onto one page for an easy look, really. In terms of who we're trying to get feedback from, we felt like we really have gone out to our key stakeholders and those who are really interested in part of the park as part of our key stakeholder workshops. So now we're moving on to more of the general public. We want the general feel. Is this a great idea? Especially where things have been designed into the park, what they would envisage at this park. We've got our key messages. We really want to make it clear the stormwater treatment facility is a infrastructure driver. Like this is really a solution to our resource consenting need, and we have to clean up water before we discharge into this estuary. We want to make it obvious that there's more benefits than just stormwater, that there's so many other opportunities at this park that we can unlock if we just turn our minds to finding all the other options along the journey, and that includes your ecological, your passive recreation. You've got opportunities for complementary commercial. So methods, which I think are the most exciting part of this, we're going to really try and do it over 4 weeks, and the final crescendo, you'd say, would be an open site on the park, and that's currently programmed for a Saturday morning for 2 hours. Ideally, in a really perfect sunny day, we'll invite people to walk up and down where the joint committee walked. But prior to that, leading up to it, would we wanting to put it in the NCC Neighbourly newsletter? We would want to do an open day at either the urban market in town or along Emerson Street. And we'd also want to be doing online materials. So that's some micro videos. That's like the likes of reels on Instagram and Facebook. That would just be little snapshots of information on the park. If you want to be on those videos, let me know. We'd love some stars. We'd be doing some Facebook informational posts, non-video versions. There'll be static images. Would be doing sponsored posts, and also on our council website page that will all be updated, and would be directing people back to that page to put their feedback through the portal on the Facebook page, on the council web page. Would look at doing a Facebook Live as well. So we'd have some pre-circulated questions that might have dripped in the early feedback series, the likes of Annette. And again, if anyone else in this joint committee wants to be part of that Facebook Live, if people are putting in their questions about the park, would say, hey, come to our open day, but also would be answering the questions on the spot. So the last icon is just the timeline. Again, we've got 4 weeks of public consultation. Public feedback. We've got a bit of a preparation week at the moment. I am going on leave very soon, so a lot of that work's been done and then will be done before the 12th of March. And then following the closure of feedback series, we'll come back to this joint committee to workshop it and workshop what the outcomes of that, what the general public say about it. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Connie. And I know we had spoken about putting something on site in terms of a billboard or an invite to the open day.
Some signage.
Some signage.
So that's leaning into our special interest groups as well in terms of like Cycle Hawke's Bay. Can we go and put it along some cycleways amongst with Hawke's Bay Regional Council managing those cycle paths? So yeah, for sure, signage too.
Great, thank you. And I will be shoulder tapping people to join me if there is a Facebook Live to talk about that. Right, I will open up for questions on the engagement planning. Or is it all sitting? Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's great you've got attendance at Mana Ahuriri Trust Hui. I'm just considering how we reflect back to our councils about how far we've got with the master plan, whether it's through committee. I guess that's a question and that's a consideration that all partners, committees in some shape or form are fed back the master plan, whether it's now or it's after the workshop that we have. But I think exposing it to our councils is a really good thing. Update of the master plan, how things are going, how the feedback's looked, and next stages to the project.
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea. I think now probably is the time. I just imagine once things go out to public consultation, councillors are going to want to know what's out there, and they're going to want to be able to talk to it themselves if they get questioned. So I'm wondering whether, you know, the same package that William's kind of presented, plus maybe a very pointed overview of the process to date, as a bit of a inform, up to speed type approach. We could look into that. Yep.
When are you expecting it first to hit public domain? It's in here.
So to make sure we stay on the program of works in terms of getting the workshop in and then getting a final back for endorsement in June, like really looking at the year ahead of us, we need to get out by early March. So 12th of March is when we want to hit the ground running on seeking public feedback.
Okay. Yeah, very good point. I know Connie and we talked about making sure that our Mana Ahuriri board and our councillors sort of get the information before it hits public. But yeah, if we could maybe lock down what that looks like. Are we thinking an in-person hui or something similar to what we've done today, or an email?
Yeah, look, I can reach out and see what's available in terms of timelines at respective councils, NCC and HBRC too, and I'll be flexible with however we bring it through.
Yeah. Okay. If we can leave that with you to work through how best to do that, I think that's good. There's some thoughts from the executive team as well. Okay. Any other thoughts on our engagement plan? I think it is reiterating that fuller plan we've had before. So, yeah, appreciate our guidance has been taken in.
If I may, just one idea that just popped into my head listening to Councillor Williams' points just about the messaging. I wonder whether the master plan, this one here, how we've got the numbers in terms of the core programs and then the letters as far as the future programs go. I was just sitting here wondering whether we should actually just have one plan showing the core programs, giving sort of indicating to the community that this is the core focus, or, what can be expected to be seen in the short to medium term. And then the potential future programs, overlaid on a second plan. Just to respond to the fact that, they may be a little bit more aspirational, and just dealing with that whole cost matter. Is there any legs to that idea, or not necessary? Just thought I'd throw it out there to test.
I'm seeing a couple of nods. Gareth?
Just a point from my instant view of the plan, and things that jumped out as me is like, well, that's going to cost a lot, and that's kind of unnecessary from an ecological perspective, like reference to a predator-proof fence. If I'd have seen it in different maps, I wouldn't have probably jumped and bought it.
Okay.
Might be a good idea.
Keith?
I think also it eliminates people see your visions and think they're going to happen. Whereas,
raising expectations.
Yeah, which always happens. And that you do split them, which I think is a really good idea, and the cost. Yeah.
Okay.
Have you got what you need?
Yeah, we'll talk to Bothamiscal about just that presentation along that messaging.
Sounds good. We do have a number of supporting maps, so that could quite easily probably flip over into another one.
I mean, the messaging must be that this is fundamentally a stormwater and biodiversity project. Which is core business for both councils involved, with opportunities for sort of cultural education and the rest of it around that. But essentially, it's coming from restoring, whanganui Aotearoa to its something like former state.
Very good. I think you've hit the nail on the head summarising those key messages in there. Yeah.
Just Chair, thinking a bit more on what everyone said, is there some sort of key principles and outcomes that we want from the park? And it'd be really useful to align them with those core projects, if you know what I mean. If it's stormwater and biodiversity, then which of the top 10 actually relate to those principles? And that way testing it with the public that we're on the right track with the principles which align to these projects, instead of trying to pick which project should be higher on the list. I think that would help with the understanding of where we've come from at the start, the purpose, with the projects that are listed here. Yep, thank you.
Could probably quite easily do that with icons.
Okay, so I'm looking at our officer's recommendation to endorse the Ahuriri Regional Park concept design for public consultation with amendments to the key map reflecting prioritisation of projects to the principles and splitting potential future programs into a second map.
Yep.
Have we got any other amendments to this one that we'd like to make before endorsing it for feedback from the public? I think we have done a lot of that today, so I appreciate that. I am happy to move that from the chair if I have a seconder. Councillor Williams, thank you. So I'll just speak to the motion in front of us. a huge thank you to the Boffa Schools team, our project management, Mana Ahuriri and our councils, because I do think that where we have got to today, like I alluded to at the start, is a real milestone. Let's not forget where we were a couple of years ago with this land being zoned industrial use for future development for Napier. We're now looking at 284 hectares of land being returned to environmental purpose of some description, whether that be regenerative forest habitat, stormwater treatment, biodiversity corridors into our city. It is a real credit to all of the mahi that's been done around this table, and with the support of our community groups, I always appreciate the turnout we get from the Ahuriri Estuary Protection Society as well. And it just, I think at our last workshop, goes to show the amount of community support and interest there is in returning the mana back to Te Whanga because of all of the years of degradation. And this is a massive first step where we're putting our money where our mouth is, not only in terms of investment into developing the park, but the foregoing of rates on industrial land as an example. This is the city making a commitment alongside Mana Whenua in our first co-governed entity to do something real in a meaningful way for our stormwater treatment. So I'm really proud of where the team have got to. I think when I look at this plan, it reflects many, many hours of hui, many side conversations with community groups, lots of, I think I've walked up and down that Piramu stream about 50,000 times over the last couple of years with different parties, just understanding what opportunities there are in here. And when I look at this, it does reflect, I think, the kaupapa that we started with. So I'm excited to see the gems that will come from community consultation. There are lots that are already in here from our wānanga, and I'm sure there will be more once people get to see it in this format. This will be exciting for many to see. So yeah, I thank you for being on this journey with us, and I will open the floor if there's any further comments to be made. Chair Ormsby, seconder.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair, and just endorse all your comments. Also to congratulate the partnership that exists here alongside Hastings District Council and DOC in endorsing and launching the Te Muri o Te Whanga plan on Friday. And this being one of the projects to address the vision to bring back the mana and mauri back to Te Whanganui Ārotu. And this is why when we started this project in the joint committee, it was important for us that it was of co-governance nature with Mana Ahuriri. And that we had strong partnerships with Mana Ahuriri going forward, because when we develop this plan and we implement, I'm hoping most of these projects that are on the list, we're able to do that in partnership and leave a legacy for all our tamariki. Kia ora.
Kia ora. I'll now open the floor if there's anyone else. You're welcome to speak to the plan.
Yeah, I suppose on behalf of Mana Ahuriri, just to acknowledge the mahi that's been done as well and working in partnership. Obviously, we want to return Te Whanga back to a good place in the future for our tamariki and mokopuna, and it's good to be in a working environment where we're trying to achieve all our aspirations for the community. So acknowledge all the mahi that all the committee members, the councils, the community groups have put into this plan. Looking forward to implementing it in the future, seeing our kids and children that enjoy the park. Kia ora.
Kia ora. If there are no further speakers, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? It is carried. Thank you very much, team. To recenter myself on the agenda now. That was our final paper. So I think I think that is us. I will ask Joe, are you happy to close us with closing karakia?
Te maanga e ngāni hiru pono te toku tūru toku I whakaungi mātiki tō ki te wāro no. Pai ere tiara mātiki te raumari ngā wā katoa, o te maanga e tau tuko mai, ai nei ake nei.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, everyone. Please stick around. I see some Kai has arrived at the back.